Hello my fellow Reveteers. Today we're going to be going over the kick 90. Now a kick 90 is a part of your conduit run that has the kick, which is this elbow that is not a 90, into a 90. The reason we use these is to avoid having to do an offset into a 90. An offset requires two bends. The kick only requires the one bend to get into the 90. So you kind of save a little bit on your bend degrees. Alright, here we go. We're going to start from scratch. I'm going to delete this thing. Go to my Systems tab, Conduit tool. I'm going to do a 2-inch conduit with an elevation of 5 feet off the floor. I'm going to hold Shift to keep it nice and straight. Alright, escape out of my Conduit tool. Okay, so there we have a flat 90 right there. Next, I'm going to go to the Modify tab, the Split Element tool, hotkey SL. And you're going to have to decide what side of the 90 you want your kick on. Today I'm going to be showing it on this longer side. So now once I've split the conduit, I need to separate one of these from the other. So I'm going to separate this long one a little bit away. I'm going to grab that fitting and delete it. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to raise this up to 6 feet. Okay. So now the whole point of the kick 90 is to get this segment to roll up and just tie onto there. Now, when you select an element like a conduit, it takes you to this Modify tab. The default offset connection it's going to have for you is this Add Vertical. And if you leave it on Add Vertical and you connect it, I'm going to drag it into that connector, it throws in an offset automatically, and it usually defaults them to 45-degree offset. Okay, that's not what I want. I want to do a kick 90. So I'm going to undo that. Select that small segment again, and I'm going to change its offset connection to change slope. Now when I grab the connector and drag it into here, it just changes the slope. There we go, we have the kick 90. Now if that's good enough for you, then there you go, you're done. You've completed that thing. You can tab through it and select it, and there you go. Let me show you a few other things you can do with it. So typically the default slope unit that Revit has is this rise over run. So that's saying for every 12 inches of horizontal distance it's traveling, it's going to rise 3 and 177 over 256 of an inch. So there's your rise over run. That's not very easy to manipulate with conduit. So what I like to do is I like to change that. I'm going to go to my Manage tab, the Project Units, and I'm going to go to the Slope Format settings. I'm going to go to Units and change that to decimal degrees and hit OK. Had a buddy I work with named Skylar who showed me that one, so I'm pretty thankful for it. Alright, now when I select this conduit, the slope shows in degrees. Now before I manipulate it, I'm going to delete this fitting so it doesn't screw around and change the elevation of that. Alright, now with it selected, I have a couple options here. I can hover over this toggle end reference and I can select it to go left to right. And what that does is it toggles between what side you want to leave and pivot and what side is going to stay. So I'm going to leave it on my right side. I want to pivot from my right and change the left side. Alright, so to change it, I'm just going to click in here and let's change it to, let's say, 30 degrees. I want a nice clean degree. I don't want some 17.10 degree bend in my run. There we go, 30. Now all that's left to do is trim this conduit together. Now in order to do that, I'm going to go to the Modify tab again. Right here, Trim Extend the Corner, hotkey TR. Let's select that. I'm going to select the piece I want, and then I'm going to select the lower section of the conduit. And there we go, kick 90. Now it's important to note why I selected the lower section, and I'm going to undo that and show you why. I'm going to show you in the 3D view because it's a little more better to visualize. So if I were to get the trim tool, select this, and select the upper part, it's going to want to trim to the upper part and give me that. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. I'm going to trim this to the lower part. There we go. Kick 90. As you can see, that fitting, stated true 30-degree fitting, and that 90 is a 90. So right there, you know, you have 120 degrees in your conduit run, and you can start figuring out how many degrees to your next pole box a lot more easier. Okay, I'm going to show you another thing or two while I'm here. I'm going to lower this back down till it's flat, and one way I like to do that is I like to grab the middle elevation and copy that, go into the slope portion, and while I have the slope portion selected, these two values, those are the elevations off the floor for this side and that side. You can see this one's just over 5'1", and this one's just over 5'11". So in order to achieve it perfectly flat again, I'm going to click in there and paste the center point value I had for this. And there we go. Should all be nice and flat again. Okay, so something to point out is this works so flawlessly because this conduit segment is perfectly in line with that conduit segment. If you remember, I just split it and pulled it apart, so it was perfectly in line. If by chance, you know, you were a little bit off and you go to connect it, we can all imagine what's going to happen. Now keep in mind, change slope is still on, so it should just roll up and connect to it nicely. And it did. But as you can see, my 90 now went to a 84.95, and my kick is pretty dog-legged. This is not what we want to do. We do not want dog legs in our conduit. It's not a good modeling practice, and it's not a good bending practice. So we're going to undo that. Go back to our kick 90. Okay. Now let's parallel this conduit and see how to play with that. So I'm going to go to Systems, Parallel Conduits. Let's change the number of conduits we want to 6. Let's change the center point offset to, let's say, 4 inches. All right, now I've got to select what side of the conduit I want to parallel, and I'm going to hit Tab to go through the whole thing. There we go, parallel conduits. Now if you notice, this first conduit, since it was rotated up to connect there, the axis of the center line of that rotated 30 degrees, and now when everything parallels off it, it comes down at that 30-degree angle, which is what we don't want. That's not really a good way to support it. So what I like to do is at that point, I just like to grab one of my elevations. Let's say I'm grabbing my bottom elevation. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to grab these 5. We're going to paste it in there. All right, there we go. So now we've got them all raised up again. Everything's flat on the same plane, ready to support with, and all your kicks should still be a nice 30 degrees. Now, sometimes this doesn't flawlessly raise and keep that the same elevation. I think we've all known the time where we raise conduits and these raise with it, and everything affects something down the line, and it kind of turns into a huge pain. So if that's happening to you, what I like to do, so now they are back down again. What I like to do is I like to, the ones I'm going to know are going to get affected, I like to delete the fitting in between them. Okay, now at this point, then I would grab that value again, the 5 feet, copy that, grab these, bottom elevation, 5 feet, raise them, and they raise. Again, only do that when these ones are starting to be affected. Now at this point, they should all still be in line with each other, so you can just trim them back together. So I'm going to go trim, extend the corner, TR, select this conduit, select the lower section. This conduit, lower section. Let's try it in the 3D view. That conduit, lower section. That conduit, lower section. Do it from below. That conduit, oops. TR, that conduit, lower section. There we go. As you can see, elbow still stayed 30 degrees. All right, it's important to note that when I raise those to begin with, if that little length right there was too short and my fitting would have gotten to the past of it, it would have thrown me an error, and you would have to decide if you want to delete that piece of conduit or not. So just something to be aware of. All right, I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm going to delete all these guys. All right, let's say you have a run of conduit that you need to do kick 90 with, and they're coming at each other at a 90-degree angle, but one's at a bottom elevation, and they're kind of, not really too good to do it. So I'm going to show you a little trick to do a kick 90 with these. What I like to do is I like to break off a little piece. So I'm going to do split element again, SL, and separate it. Now, if I happen to just grab this element here, and with change slope activated, grab that and connect, it will connect as long as there's enough room to generate the fitting. If I grab this, I can connect. Okay, and it's all connected. But of course, it's not what we want, right? Our 90 is, again, some lower angle, 72 degrees. Everything's dog-legged. Not the right way to go about it. So I'm going to undo that. Okay, so the way I like to do it is I like to get the end point of this conduit, and it has to be extended to the center point of the center line. Now, sometimes you can just click and drag, and it'll lock into that, and that's great. Well, that'll work right there. But if for some reason you got a lot of stuff going on, it's not seeing that center line, it's not snapping to it, what I like to do is I like to align the center point to this center point. And to do that, I like to do it in a 3D view, and I'll show you how I do it. This is a trick I learned from a guy named Andrew. I saw a video he did. Can't remember his last name, but credit goes to him. It was pretty impressive when I saw him do it. Okay, so this only really works well if I can see the face of that conduit. So I like to use the Align tool, AL. And this is the conduit I want to align to, so I'm going to find it first. And I'm going to tab through until I can see the center line. There we go. Okay, so center line is our reference. Now I like to go to the conduit that I need to bring to the center line. And I'm going to hit tab until I see a circle. So tab 1, there's a blue square. Tab 2, there's a circle. Select it, and as you can see, escape out of that, I brought it to the center line. Now, when you grab that conduit, remember change slope is still on, I'm going to grab it and pull it to meet it right at that center point. Boom, and there we go, it kicked in. And as you can see, it generated a true 90. Now with this there, I can also change the slope. So let's go back to 30 degrees. Oh, there we go. Now I can trim it all together. Trim tool, big pipe to the section I want. There we go. Kick 90. Works pretty good every time. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think. I mean, I'm sure there's other ways to do it. I'll show you guys it in a 3D view just kind of quickly so you can see it be done. I'm sure there's plenty of ways to do it. Let me know what your favorite way is. If you got a better way, if you got a faster way, whatever, I don't know. I mean, it's all about the quickness, right? So, anyways. I do use macro buttons on my mouse to get those tools to come up pretty quick. There we go. 30 degree, 90 degree. Alright, kick 90. Alright, that's it.